Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my full review on this nice little knife. It's not little, this nice knife. Anyway, this is the Artisan Centauri, which was loaned to me for review by my buddy Kyle of DTOM Knives and Gear. Kyle has become a good buddy at this point. I really appreciate him sending this, as with all of the other loaners that he has sent me or that I currently have. Just a great guy. Kyle's channel will be linked down below. Check him out if you haven't already. There's a reason why we have become friends, and I really like the videos that he makes. So this is an interesting one for me. I was thinking about it over the last couple of days, trying to remember if I had owned anything from Artisan before. And I don't think I have. I have owned one CJRB, which is Artisan's kind of budget line under a different name, but same company, right? And I had the CJRB Tala for a little bit. I liked that knife. I ended up giving it away to an Instagram follower. But that was the only Artisan manufactured knife that I've ever even owned. And it's interesting because I was thinking back to when I first started kind of collecting knives in the sense of how I collect knives now. And my tolerance for what I would spend on a knife at the time was much less than it is now. For illustration's sake, like I would not have spent I wouldn't have even touched $100 on a knife just to buy at the time. Maybe for like a birthday or something, I would have asked for that knife above that point. But like just buying knives to check out and try and carry and use, I wouldn't have spent over $100. Whereas like today, I happen to have just sold a knife. I had some money sitting in PayPal on a knife that I wanted, became available, and after tax today, I bought a knife that was like $460 something. So things change over time, right? But when I started collecting knives, there were a couple of artisans that I remember really kind of researching, watching some videos on, and I was really close to pulling the trigger on. I never ended up buying them, I think because I had a lot of knives I was looking at the point. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose when you're just kind of getting into the world of knives and realizing how many options there really are. But I don't remember the model names of the ones I was looking at the time, but they were sub $100, and they were intriguing looking knives. I just never ended up getting them, so I don't know whether they were good or not. But in my mind, Artisan as a brand, I've always kind of thought of in that range because that's what I was looking at the time. And it's interesting to me now to check this knife out. For this to be the first Artisan that I've really done more than just play with for a moment, and not counting the CJRB, but a true Artisan, this one is like $200 and premium materials, very good fit and finish, and it's not what Artisan was in my mind. It's way better. And so I've liked that this is kind of where I've really given Artisan a chance, is starting with this one. I don't know that the rest of the knives in Artisan's current lineup would be as intriguing to me as this one. I'm not super familiar with their lineup. I'm sure there are some of them that would look familiar to me. It's not that I've been totally blind to them, but just haven't given them that much attention. This knife got my attention when it came out, and I almost got one. I really did. Probably more than once, but just never pulled the trigger on it because much like when I started, there's still a lot of knives I really want to experience. And so I'm really glad I've gotten to experience this one. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, let's talk a little bit about materials on this one, and we'll go from there. I already went over these materials in my first impressions, so if you watch that, quick redundancy. Blade steel, S35 VN. Come on, focus. Show scale, carbon fiber. We've got this nice milled line in it in true Laconico fashion, as this is a Laconico design knife. We have a titanium backspacer, which has most of the stuff that would typically be billboarded on the blade, so I like that. On the blade we just have Artisan symbol. On this side we have the steel marking and the serial number. And then the clip side / lock side scale, we have a titanium scale, which does have this really fine milling on it. I don't know if it'll show through, I hope it does. But it's got this really nice, very subtle texture. And then we have a milled titanium pocket clip. In the lock bar we do have an insert with a hardened steel interface and an over travel stop. and those are our ingredients. So carbon fiber, titanium, S35VN, that's a nice list of ingredients. This is certainly kind of in the premium materials range. I struggle to call S35VN a premium steel just because I know it makes people mad when I say it's not premium, but it's at $200, great steel choice. So, yeah, the materials are nice, the fit and finish is very nice, the action is very smooth. This knife runs on bearings, of course, and it is stupid drop shutty. I don't know if that focused. Let's try that one more time. Focus on the knife. Come on. There we go. And it's also, sometimes there are knives that are really drop shutty because they're like super blade heavy, and that's one thing. But this knife is a fairly thin blade stock, and it's not like a crazy heavy blade. It's just a really, really smooth action. And you can feel that on deployment as well. It feels excellent to fidget with, frankly. So we've got great fit and finish, great tolerances from what I can perceive. Lockup is solid. Everything about this knife structurally seems very good to me. So let's talk about the things that I like about it, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I'm not so on board with. I don't know that there will be many, but we'll try to kind of come to a conclusion on this one. So first of all, the things that I like. Number one is going to be how slim this knife is. I've grown to really appreciate very slim knives because the way that they carry in the pocket, it's just so much more comfortable than a thick knife. It's like one of the biggest factors of what makes a pocket knife nice in pocket. There are a couple of things. The clip also plays into it. The weight plays into it. This knife being nice and thin, being made of what it's made of, it's fairly lightweight. The pocket clip is very functional. It's not sharp anywhere, which is a big pet peeve of mine. I hate it when pocket clips are sharp at the tips and they catch on things and snag on stuff and scratch you if you touch them wrong. Like, that's a bummer. This is not that way. This is a nice rounded pocket clip that goes in and out of pocket easily, has a good amount of retention. It's been pleasant in any pair of shorts or pants that I've worn it in so far, which has been a few, like a good solid couple different types of pants. It's good. So the thinness, the lightness, the way it carries is all very good. I like that quite a bit. The ergos of this knife are one of the strong points, I think, as well. I really like when knife designers and companies just do away with trying too hard and settle on a nice neutral handle shape. There are times when a non-neutral handle shape can be an advantage, when it really locks you in, but it's got to be just right if it's not neutral. This one being neutral, this knife isn't like what I would call locked in, like knives with a bunch of grooves and stuff are, but it's very comfortable and very pleasant. And in my mind, this is not a hard use knife. This is not a tactical knife. This is not a knife that's designed to do anything other than look cool, be fun to play with, and be functional for light to medium duty EDC tasks. It's almost kind of gentleman's knife in the way it's finished and put together. So these ergos, for what I would do with a knife like this, are excellent. It's just so neutral everywhere. The whole handle is, it fits my hand in any position that I put it, and I can choke up, I can choke back, I can come way up here and kind of do this thing. Like there's nothing prohibiting me from moving around on the handle in a way that I want to. It's not also like the handle is so slippery that I move without meaning to, but feels good. The groove as well in the carbon fiber actually does, when I'm in like a saber grip or a hammer grip on this knife, it gives me kind of a spot for my fingertips to land in a nice way, to index a little better, know where I am on the knife, and then also just to get a little more purchase on it, to feel like I've got a little bit more traction on the knife itself. So I like that. Yeah, the best things about it really are the thinness for how it carries, the lightness, all of that. The ergos are definitely kind of a win in my book. There's one negative that I'll put there, so put a pin in that. And then the action is the shining feature of this knife. Front flippers are a lot of fun if you can do them. If you can't do a front flipper and that was bad. If it doesn't work for you, then they're a bummer because it doesn't work for you. But if you get used to using a front flipper, they're just, in my opinion, a lot of fun to play with. They're no more functional than a knife that I can spidey flick or thumb flick or use a flipper tab for, or a button for automatic deployment, or any of those other opening methods. This isn't a better opening method, functionally speaking. But it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy playing with front flippers. I just get a kick out of them. Part of it is probably because they make up like the smallest part of my collection deployment-wise, so it's just kind of different compared to the normal. Maybe the more and more that front flippers become prolific in the knife world, I'll find them less and less exciting. But for now, I really enjoy a good front flipper. I find that it's fun to sit and fidget with. It's a little bit more challenging than a normal flipper, so it feels good to just get it right. This one being a nice bigger size, I find makes it easier than a lot of the little front flippers that I've tried. I think the only time I've ever slipped on this knife was just now when I had it up here and I was trying to do it all awkwardly for you. I don't really fail on deploying this knife, and so I like that. I like that it's taking an opening method that's what I would consider a little atypical, and it's making it very usable here. The detent is dialed just right, so it's the right level of snappy, but it's not too hard to deploy. You get a crisp thwack every time you open the knife. It locks up solid, and then shutting this knife is as fun as opening it. I mean, the way that it just gravity takes over and it falls shut is a lot of fun. It's very smooth, and you can feel the smoothness the whole time you're playing with it, and I don't know, I just like the action quite a bit on this one. I don't know that I've personally held a production front flipper that has been as good as this one. The only one I have currently is the Kaiser Feist. This has a better action than the Kaiser Feist, certainly. I have a Vero Axon on the way. Well, it's pre-ordered. I don't think it's technically on the way yet. That's going to be a front flipper that I'm curious to see whether it's going to be as satisfying as this. I hope it is. This is a really good front flipper. So yeah, the action is great. The ergos are fairly good, regardless of the thing I put a pin in, which we're going to talk about. Carry is good. Yeah, there's a lot of good happening here. Now, the one thing ergonomically that bothers me a little bit, it's not a huge thing, it's not a deal breaker on the knife. I talked about it in my first impressions and it didn't get any better. It's just this corner here. Right here where the lock bar is cut, where it kind of terminates at the edge of the knife right here, this corner is sharp. It's not like, ooh, that's going to cut me sharp, but even right now, it's like, ooh, that's kind of, it's got a little bit of an edge on it. So in hand, where I naturally grab onto this knife, I put my finger right there, like every time if I'm not thinking about it, and it's an uncomfortable spot. If I go forward like 2 millimeters, I don't feel it anymore. It's kind of in the gap between my fingers here. If I go back, then it doesn't bother me because it's right in front of my finger and I don't feel it. So because this handle is so neutral, I can put my finger in front of or behind it in a way that it's not bothersome. But where I naturally want to grab this knife, it puts it right there every time, and I just wish that they had knocked that corner off or something. Because there are other makers out there who have figured out how to make that corner not suck to put your hand on. And that's right where your hand goes. So I wish that they had kind of figured that out and addressed that and just rounded it a little bit or something, so that it wouldn't be an annoying spot to put my finger. Other than that, there's really not much negative I can say about this knife. The finishing is all very nice. There's no voids or anything in the carbon. The titanium is finished very well. I like the subtle texture they've put on it. The blade finish is nice. I like the blade stock thickness. I like the way it's ground. It's reasonably thin. It's a good cutter. There's just a lot of good happening here, and I feel like it makes me way more curious about Artisan. I don't think I'm going to run out and get one of these because I already have a Feist, and like I said, I pre-ordered an Axon, so I don't know that in the midst of the other knives I currently have, whether I'd feel a need to have this in addition. But I really like this knife. If I hadn't just ordered the Axon, I might kind of search one of these out. It's just a lot of fun to play with. It's pleasant to carry. There's a lot of good happening here. So my overall review, frankly, is that this knife is very good. And it does make me much more interested in what Artisan is doing these days, and much more optimistic about knives coming from them from the future, especially collaborative pieces like this. This is a collaboration with them and Ray Laconico, who's a fantastic knife designer and has worked with a number of companies. But if they can keep working with designers and making their designs well, then I also feel better. You can argue with this all you want, but I like it better buying a Chinese knife that's been designed by someone here in the US who's using them for manufacturing. At least there's some American tie to the knife, and it's better than it just being an internal artisan design, in my opinion. At least someone in the US is benefiting a little bit in some way from this knife being in my hands. So I guess that'll be that. It's a little bit all over the place, apologize, but those are my thoughts and feelings today, friends. Anyway, this is the Artisan Centauri, Ray Laconico design, and thanks again to Kyle for sending it to me for review. I'll probably miss it a little bit when I send it back to him. It's been a lot of fun to play with. I really have enjoyed this knife. So, there you have it.